Sinyasla, good evening, everyone. My name is Jisgang Nika Collison, and welcome to Kantal u Hinanga u Ijans, Kandal u Hainanga u Iji. Water is life. It's great to see you all on this beautiful evening, and I am so excited for our guest speakers tonight. But first, we do need to honor and respect that there are families in mourning. And we'll do this first by having a moment of silence to send our love and support. Okay, so we send our love to everyone out there that needs healing and love and support. And now I will ask for Haldang Lagudat, Marina Jones, to start our evening off in a good way.
Let us pray. Creator God, Solana, we ask that you walk in the midst of us. We ask, O Lord, for wisdom and guidance in all that we do. We pray, Lord, as we speak of the waters, that you'll send the precious elders into our midst, our ancestors, to give us wisdom and knowledge of knowing what is important to us as a people. I ask, O Lord, that you walk gently in the midst of us. I thank you, Solana. Today, we are blessed that we're able to gather to discuss the importance of water. Hawa Salama. Amen.
Hawa so much, Haldang Lagudat. And good evening again to everyone out there, and welcome to those who've just joined us. Today is Thursday, April 22nd, and Earth Day to boot. We are live on Zoom and the Council of the Haida Nations Facebook Live for tonight's webinar, Gantul u Hinanga u Ijans. Gandul u Hainanga u Iji. Water is life. We're here tonight with water champions, Chief Nang Jingwas, Russ Jones, Haldang Lagudat, Marina Jones, Layla Reynolds, Nankilslas Trent Mores, Keith Gulakaya, Severn Kalas Suzuki, Aitha Hialas, Rain Boyko, and Keith Gulan's Christian White. Tonight is our sixth and final webinar, maybe final, in a series focused on a Haida Gwaii food strategy. Back in September 2020, we kicked off our first webinar with food independence, reflecting on how our island responded to the COVID-19 pandemic and how we were looking to the future we wanted to build together. We then hosted two more before Christmas, Youth Food Ignited and Our Food is Our Medicine, hearing from island youth and elders and their connection to the food from the land and sea of Haida Gwaii. We returned in the new year with Farm to Table, hearing from local farmers, and our most recent webinar, Nourish and Flourish, focused on our municipalities and building up our local food economy. Tonight is maybe the final food strategy webinar. I say maybe because we keep thinking of new ones. And tonight it's focused on the importance of water on Haida Gwaii. I'm really excited about this webinar. I really don't know why, but water, well, I do know why, but water is so close and dear to my heart. And I've just been really looking forward to it. And we want to acknowledge the following partners with the planning and implementation of all of our webinars: Skidegate Band Council and the Haida Dlangsta Society, or Skidegate Health Center, Skidegate Youth Center, Council of the Haida Nation, Nislane Healing House and the Healthy Haidas Program, MEADS, the Misty Isles Economic Development Society, Local Food to School Program and Northern Health, Haida Child and Family Services, Sweelaweed Sustainability Society, the Haida Gwaii Museum, the Gwai Trust, and the Wellness Committee. There's a lot of people involved, and it's been an amazing run so far. It's been a real privilege to be a part of this. And all of you are involved by showing up to these webinars or talking about them, and you can get even more involved by sending your ideas or offers of support or input to hgfoodstrategy@gmail.com. That's hgfoodstrategy@gmail.com. As well, you can add your questions live tonight and share your experiences and vision for island food and clean water by typing them into the chat box on Zoom or Facebook. During the evening, Kara Seavright will be doing her beautiful graphic recordings, listening hard to all the wise words that will be shared, and we'll get to enjoy that later in the evening. As always, we have some wonderful door prizes for those that do participate in the chat. 4 lucky participants will receive a beautiful medicine bag filled with local tea donated by Nice Lene, along with a Ginatwaduhan Plu, the Everything Canoe book donated by the Haida Gwaii Museum. I'm so excited, as I mentioned earlier. I'm passionate about water, from our Haida ways and knowledge and to the scientific ways and knowledge of understanding water. Every second breath we take comes from the ocean. When my son was 6, I asked him, what is the most important thing in the world? And he didn't even bat an eye. He didn't even look at me. He was doing something and he said, water. I was like, wow, what's the second most important thing? And he said, love. And so if we are to build a sustainable and just world for all people and the planet, we need to protect the water. Water is life, and we need to practice love. So I'm really thrilled to welcome our first speaker tonight, Nung Jingwas, Russ Jones, who is the hereditary chief of the Nas Agas Haida Gwaii, which is a branch of the Thakilda Gittins. He spent his early years as a commercial fisherman and worked for the Council of the Haida Nation for 3 decades. He holds a Master of Science in Fisheries from the University of Washington. He coordinated the development of the Haida Gwaii Marine Plan, served on the First Nation panel on fisheries, and was the commissioner for the North Pacific Anadromous Fish Commission. Over the years, he has written a variety of papers on marine planning, ocean issues, and fisheries, including Haida ethics and values and reconciliation of ocean issues. He is currently the co-lead of a technical team that is developing a herring rebuilding plan for Haida Gwaii and is a commissioner on the Pacific Salmon Commission. Tonight, Nung Jingwas will focus on the ocean and talk about the changes he's seen in his lifetime and why marine spatial plans and marine protected areas are really important for future generations. He will also talk about the impact of climate change and ocean changes on salmon, herring, and other species, and how this affects Haida food security and sustainable fisheries. Welcome, Nung Jingwas.
Howard Jisgang. Singhas La. Ahai to Wadlachen for Kings at the Goodingai La Diga. Good evening. I'm happy to see everyone today. I'll talk about what water means to me. I've lived and worked on the ocean all my life. I'm going to talk about the changes I've seen in the ocean over my lifetime, what we can do to protect the ocean for future generations, and why it matters to us on Haida Gwaii. So what are the changes in the ocean? I was lucky to grow up at a time when many Haida and locals worked in the commercial fishing industry. As a teenager and young man, I worked as a deckhand on salmon trawlers and seine boats. I ran my own trawler in the late 1970s and early 1980s. I got to see and know much of Haida Gwaii from my travels on the water. There have been many changes since then. Shorter fishing seasons, fewer openings, fewer Haida boats. Today, it's difficult to make a living from salmon fishing alone. Climate change is affecting us. Winds on the west coast cause upwelling of nutrient-rich water from the depths. This supports plankton blooms that gives water its green color and makes our oceans productive. Warmer ocean temperatures aren't good for our fish. The blob was an unusually warm water that sat off our coast for several years, beginning in 2013. This disrupted the timing of herring spawning in Guayhanas and led to poor herring survival and growth. It dissipated, but we saw another blob return again in 2019 that's still continuing. Another change is that the ocean is becoming more acidic. This is caused by more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere from fossil fuel emissions. This can have deadly effects on shellfish because they make their shells from calcium in the seawater. Dead zones in the ocean are also becoming more common. These are places where most fish can't live. Dead zones are complex and can be caused by pollution, changing wind patterns, and warmer waters, which affect upwelling and can cause harmful algal blooms. We don't have any dead zones here, but changes in wind patterns have led to dead zones off the coast of Oregon. So what can we do? I worked for the Haida Nation in fisheries and marine planning for 30 years. I'll briefly talk about what the Haida Nation has been doing and how it will help. The 2015 Haida Gwaii Marine Plan provides a blueprint for sustainable ocean management around Haida Gwaii. We documented and applied Haida marine traditional knowledge in our planning. Our work was based on Haida ethics and values like respect, responsibility, interconnectedness, balance, seeking wise counsel, and giving and receiving. Our work applied ecosystem-based management. The Haida Nation marine plans guide how we use our ocean space. The Council of Haida Nation is advancing marine protected areas around Haida Gwaii. These will protect key habitats important for fish. They provide an insurance policy for the ocean. Haida Gwaii can be an example for others on how we can safeguard the ocean for future generations. So why does this matter to us on Haida Gwaii? Fewer young people are growing up on the water. We don't want to lose our cultural connection to the ocean and ocean spaces. Take every chance you can to get out on the water and experience Haida Gwaii as our ancestors did. This can be gathering food, going to the beach, going out on a boat, taking part in rediscovery camps, or working as watchmen, guardians, managers, crew on fishing boats, or as guides. These ocean changes affect our food security. For example, we're seeing less herring in places there used to be lots and have less access to fresh cow in our communities than in the past. We also see more outbreaks of red tide, which when we can't safely harvest shellfish. There are still many viable fisheries around Haida Gwaii for halibut, black cod, and crab, to name a few. The Council of Haida Nation is making efforts to get back into commercial fisheries. There is potential to redesign fisheries and implement a Haida rights-based fishery so that Haida people can continue to make a living from the ocean. In closing, we're lucky to live in a place where we can still get our food from the ocean. Our home is still largely free from pollution and industrial development. We need to treat the ocean with respect. We must protect our waters. We have to carefully manage what we have so it's there for future generations. Gentangwan siwai talang aichit ganga. How kwan u it gaga ket galang hainanga gut la gaska. Our children will have a good life if we look after the ocean. Digi dalang useless, skaudigi dalang gasel kil laga. Thank you for listening to me. Hawa.
Hawa kills Sly. Oh, it's so good to, yeah, I was getting all teary-eyed. I'm glad my video was off because you got some really big movement there in what we can do. what we can do as Haida citizens, as citizens of Haida Gwaii, to respect the water, to ensure we have food and economy, and Hawa so much, because you offered so many ways in which we can give ourselves back to Haida Gwaii and reconnect, like you said, to be as our ancestors were. And Hawa, for those powerful words, and for all the work you have done for decades for Haida Gwaii and for the ocean. And in that, I thank you for the work you've done beyond Haida Gwaii, because the ocean is what connects us around the world. So it reminded me of a story of how rivers and salmon came to Haida Gwaii back during the time when we were probably just getting light in the world from Raven stealing it. Around the same time, he went to the mainland, and he wound up being taken in by some beavers, and they loved to gamble, and then they would feast, and the beavers would go behind the screen and bring out these beautiful tuna salmon, and they'd eat them. And then one day the beavers went off to work, as beavers are busy working, and so Raven went behind the screen and found the salmon. And I'm told that he rolled up the river in which they were flowing like a carpet, sort of, and put it in his mouth. Yeah. And then flew over Haida Gwaii. And I can't remember what happened, but some of the droplets became lakes, and I think eagle, now I'm making it up, so don't listen to me, but something happened. So there were drops of waters and fish everywhere, and lakes and rivers were all connected. And you always remind me of that, Nanjingwas. Hawas so much.
That's a great story. Hawa.
Hawa. And then next we have Haldang Laguda, Marina Jones. Marina is from the Naikun Kigawai clan. The meaning of her name, Haldang Laguda, is keeper of slaves. She lives in Autlage with her husband of 50 years, David Jones, and their 50th anniversary is June 25th, 2021. Happy early anniversary, Marina and David. Marina has been an ordained deacon with the Anglican Church since 1986 and is supposed to be retired, kind of like Nang Jingwas. Her family is too big to name, but she has raised and supported many children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Welcome, Marina. It's so good to have you here tonight.
Oh, well, I'm all nervous, but I'm thankful for being here. Today we're going to talk about water. And I was sitting down and I've been losing sleep, and I was thinking, what is the importance of water? Today, just sitting here, matter of minutes, I watched vehicles going by. A big white ship brought one of our loved ones home for their last journey. So I'm thankful for the waters that we're able to gather together as a nation. Even through this COVID, we could gather to show our respects. I was trying to think about what is the importance of water. I start thinking about when I was a young child with siblings, 10 of us, 9 of us girls and 1 brother. I remember walking down the street, few doors from where we lived. We had to walk over to a pump, pack buckets and buckets, and I mean buckets of water. We had a packet for bathing. Our mom used to be busy baking. And with 10 or 12 of us in the home, you could imagine all the laundry that had to be done. The importance of water, it makes you sit back and think about how things have changed. I remember walking down the beach early in the morning with my nanny and Chinny, my grandparents, who I loved so unconditional. How they held my hand, how my grandfather, my Chinny, would load up the boat to go up to Yakun. We made a fun trip out of it. I remember Chinny chasing the birds just to make my brother Leo and myself laugh. I remember walking the beaches in Yakun, little children playing out, making sailboats. Our grandparents didn't have to worry. We were on safe territory. All families knew who the grandchildren belonged to. All the families looked out for us. So at the waters, it was a safe place. It's just like they were our own mom and dad that watched out for us. I remember my grandparents. Sometimes you say to be a grandparent, you have to be in your 60s, 70s, or 80s. But I remember my grandparents taking me when I was just a little child, 6 years old, and they took the time to teach. My grandfather setting his nets, my grandmother and Chinny pulling in the catch. I remember the joy when the sockeye would be in the net. We were called, just like I was served with tonight. My nickname is Wowie. Nani would yell, Wowie at supper time. And you know, that was the most beautiful words to hear. It's supper time. We were able to eat fresh sockeye from the seas. We were able to eat fresh water, fresh sockeye from the sea. We were able to share the first cats. Listening to the jars banging together, filling the jars with the sockeye, it was something beautiful. Train up a child in the way they shall go, and they shall never depart from it. I think of these words when I stand in our smokehouse. We hang our halibut, we hang our sockeye, we hang our black cod, and you know, we even make chilch, something that will not go spoiled, and our children cherish the feed when it's done. I think of our grandparents in those waters. Sometimes it was rough, sometimes it was calm. And that's just the way it is in our life. We will see calm days when things seem to be out of hand. But you know what I always think about? My grandmother. Out of that water, we were able to feed not only a household, but many other families. Christmas time, Easter, a big party. There was always plenty and many more for the doors to be always open. It was like our grandparents had a huge store. Not only that, you think about the waters of the ocean. Just like you talk about the eagles dropping droppings into the forest, were able to eat fruits, canned fruit. And I think of one of our elders. When the tide is out, the table is spread. Water is the lifeblood of the earth. And I always smile to myself when I look out at the ocean from our home. God made no mistake when he made a steward of this beautiful land that we call Haida Gwaii. I smiled today. I opened a sacred gift. Not because maybe it may have been an anniversary, birthday, or maybe another day. I opened a sacred gift to see the beautiful creation, the water in front of our home. A sacred gift, I opened my eyes. I seen the waters, I seen the trees, I watch the eagles. I watch the ravens. I watch children running around the rocks, a playground where they could feel safe. I always think about someone saying about our community when it's blowing and gusty. They say, what a terrible day. But you know, when it pours rain, we got to be thankful because we have the salmon that is making it up those rivers. Our plates are not going to be empty. When it rains, the water comes up to our trees. Those trees are giving us oxygen. You think about many times we go into the co-op, we might pick up food that is not healthy for us. Can opener, cookers, that's what I feel like some days, but you know what? We have nutrition from the ocean. We have our halibut, we have our sea urchins, we have seaweed, we have chitons, cow, sea asparagus, clams, crabs. You think about all these things, our pantries will always be full. You look at the beach, when you walk the beaches, there's healing medicine. We can go to a pharmacy, we could pay big dollars, but if we go into the forest, we are blessed. Maybe someone might fall on the ground, and there's always a purpose. There's nothing, I always say there's a purpose for everything. If you fall, sit down and think of why. I thank God today because I think of the killer whales. When I watch the vehicles going by with our loved ones in the casket, I was thinking the killer whales go up our waters. They have come to receive the spirits of our loved ones that passed. Imagine today, I looked out into the waters. I listened to the eagles. You could go into a place in Vancouver or wherever. You could pay big bucks to listen to an orchestra. But you know, every second on Haida Gwaii, we listen to the orchestra of music. Our eagles are singing. Our ravens are singing. Our killer whales are blowing when they go by. They're echoing peace and harmony to our community. How do we look at our lands and waters? Are we knowledge keepers? Do we share our knowledge on what needs to be changed and what can be done better? You think about the preparation of foods. You think about how many hours. I always cherish my mother-in-law that passed. I would phone and I would say, how long should I can my fish? She would tell me the amount of hours. Always share your knowledge with your children about the importance of continuing prepping your winter food. What do we want for our children's children? I was smiling and I was thinking again of being a young child out on the field. Our grandparents yell on your march, get ready, get set, go. And it made me think, we can't get anywhere if we don't participate in the race and just stand still. Today, I was remembering those that passed. Plant that tree. So I was saying maybe if we plant a tree in remembrance of those that passed, we will have the oxygen, the water surrounding about us. Say, I'm doing what I can. A little gesture is don't give up, keep going. I look at the waters. Today I looked out at the waters. I was smiling, thinking about the canoes that once traveled those waters. A few days ago, we had the biggest surprise of our life. I cried like a baby. It took 3 hours to see a daughter that we haven't seen for 2 years, all account of a little boat coming across. Imagine, think of the canoes that traveled those waters. I always say, I say Hawa Salana, because in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without void. There was nothing, but He created this so that we could be stewards. I think, I don't know if this part should be in there, but I always think about the cedar tree. That cedar tree came from a seed. Mighty beautiful gifts we have been blessed by for our Aboriginal people. This cedar tree, it gave us a canoe that we could travel from village to village. It gave us a longhouse that we could sing and dance. It gave us dancing regalia that we could celebrate. It gave us totem poles that we could tell our stories. I'm going to use one more example. I was using a water hose the other day to clean our truck. And I was imagining if I was an artist and did a beautiful portrait, I accidentally spilled paint all over. I ask a loved one to turn on the hose when I give the go ahead. But by accident, the loved one turns it on way too soon. You can't take back those few seconds. The big spray has already happened. The portrait is a bit damaged, but can be fixed. Now let's look at our waters and land. Can it be fixed? Yep, it starts with you and I to protect our waters, our land. So I'll just close with this and say, Creator, guide and give us the wisdom to treat our Mother Earth, our waters with respect. We say Hawa for filling our plates. Again, Creator, Hawa for this few minutes to share the importance of what you have given us. Hawa Shalom. Amen.
Hawa haldang lagudat. Marina, that was so beautiful. And you said so much. And there was a lot that you said that was so powerful. And within it, you did mention that water is the lifeblood of the earth. And then you went on to say that God made no mistake when he made a steward of the beautiful lands that we call the Haida Gwaii. And you also mentioned earlier on about hauling water in water buckets, right? Like in pails and stuff like that. And those, amongst everything else you said, it made me think of, I'm going to share a photo of this beautiful container. It's made long ago, you know, in the 1800s. And it's Haida made. It was collected in Tlingit territory. It's been dubbed the final exam because the design is so extraordinary that you can show your artistic talent from being able to achieve something of this quality. And we've been working with this container at the American Museum of Natural History, and we're trying to figure out what it might have been used for. And in looking in other containers, it has the same shape as a water bucket, a coastal water bucket, or as a container that holds water. And it could have been used for boiling water when you put the hot stones in the water too. But what I'm leading up to is when you hear the word water bucket, it just sort of sounds wrong. Like you're like, oh, how could you call this a water bucket? But you laid it out perfectly. You know, water is life, and our ancestors knew that. So why wouldn't they honor water? Why wouldn't they honor life with beauty and design and scholarship? So Hawa for reminding us of this, Marina. Water is life. Kando'u, Hainangauiji.
I wanted to share one more thing. I have to, I'm not bragging, I'm just being proud of a granddaughter. She lost 100 pounds drinking water, and she's going to come home to Haida Gwaii to get married as soon as COVID is over. 100 pounds, water can do it.
Lagutsuga. Congratulations to your daughter for her health and her love and for coming home to get married. That's so exciting, Marina. How?
Early Pearl.
Okay. And it's, you know, like the one time I did yoga in my life, the gentleman said that, you know, if you drink like so much water carefully throughout the day, but a lot, it really does improve your health and can lead to weight loss, or whatever health you need. Water is critical. So congratulations again. Next, we have Layla Reynolds, who is 12 years old. Layla likes water for many reasons, but most of all, she likes swimming, surfing, boogie boarding, sailing, and paddle boarding in the rivers and oceans of Haida Gwaii. Layla hopes the waters around Haida Gwaii and the rest of the world stay clean and healthy for all the animals who live in them. Tonight, Layla will be sharing a poem that she wrote about water. Welcome, Layla.
Thank you. Water, oh water, oh water in the sea. The sea is so vast we can't help but feel free. Into water we can dive to see where animals thrive, but don't forget about the plants, they too are alive. Water, oh water, oh water in the rivers. There are so very many and all the food they deliver. Some rivers run deep and slow, we can only guess where they will go, while others topple over rocks before glowing with the flow. Water, oh water in the lakes can be clean and fresh and cure many aches. Home to insects, plankton, amphibians, and fish, that they remain clean and healthy is forever our wish. Water, oh water everywhere. On Haida Gwaii we may have our fair share, but we must always remember to treat it with care.
Wow, that is wonderful, Layla. And as I was saying earlier, I think you are possibly Haida Gwaii's next poet laureate. That was really beautiful. And you're quite a water champion, hey? You really care about the water. And you know, our youth are just so darn smart, right? And I thank you very much for all the care and love that you have for the water, not only of Haida Gwaii, but the world. I really hope you keep up with your poetry and your water sports. I think those are going to do some pretty powerful things in the world now and as you move forward. So, Hawa, so much.
Thank you.
And just before we move on to our next guest, I am going to read out a couple. Oh, I've lost my oh, there we go. I'm going to read out a couple of comments because we've had some really lovely ones in here, and I think it lines up very well with Layla and our prior speakers. We have a comment from Bear Lake John Knoll. Water, or maybe Bear Lake is where from John Knoll's from. Water is sacred. Sacred as the water our mother carries us in for 9 months. Good point. Without water, we all won't be here. How us so much for that note, John. And another one from Alrita. Hi, Alrita Leesk. How are you? Water is a very important part of our life. Climate change is quickly having a dramatic effect on us, and that definitely is something Nang Jingwas touched on. However, that, and then there's, this follows right into yours, Marina. Lisa White said the ancient trees store water for us all. Everything is connected. So Hawa for those words. And I'll remind our guests to continue to put your chat, your comments, your questions, your ideas, particularly tonight around water security, into the chat box. And you will also qualify to win an awesome door prize. There's 4 prizes tonight. So our next speaker is Nung Kilslas, Trent Mores. Trent is currently the Deputy Chief Counselor for the Skidegate Band Council. Previously, Trent was the Director of Housing, Lands and Energy with the Skidegate Band Council for approximately 10 years, focusing on creating and maintaining healthy and safe housing for all band members. His work has mainly been in housing and infrastructure, but he has also worked in lands and economic development, energy, band membership, and estates. He also sits on the province's Indigenous Climate Action Technical Working Group and Remote Community Energy Strategy Working Group. Trent's experience in working with high levels of government brings solid insight to his work with the Skidegate Band Council and his community and beyond. Tonight, Nung Kilslas will speak to us about, this is great, water conservation and the work being done in Skidegate on this topic. Welcome, Nung Kilslas. How are you this evening?
Hello, Jiscom. Hello, everyone. Good to see everyone. Hello to the speakers previously. Layla, that was a beautiful poem. I've been doing a lot of work with energy for the Skidegate Band for some time now, and you wouldn't think that water is a part of energy, but it's actually a pretty important aspect of energy. We've been working with our energy initiatives for some time, and water is one of the largest renewable resources we have. I'm going to show you a slide that I did some time ago for a Clean BC event for climate adaptation. And in that slide, it will show you our progress on how we came through our water conservation and how we studied and implemented strategies with that. I'll just start my slide. This is Skidigate's water conservation adaptation. And the reason it's listed that way is because in the summer of 2015, Skidegate entered its first drought ever recorded in history. And in that drought, we entered into an area that was unknown to anyone in Skidegate. It had never been encountered this in our history. So we took it upon ourselves to investigate why the low water occurred and how to prevent it in the future. We worked with ISK for solutions and assistance. We hired a team of engineers to come up and help us, where we collected a lot of information like bathymetry. We implemented some strategies that came out of our studies, like a dam raise, redevelop our berm, install a proper spillway to prevent any spillage from the dam, installed measuring devices for water levels, and we created a better aspect for our asset management using flow valves, visual aspects, and reporting. We also created an emergency plan for anything that may future happen with our water shortages or say a landslide or something to that aspect. We did this all through our comprehensive community planning. We had a lot of engagement where we approached it with surveys, workshops, and ended with a celebration, which is later. This is a roadmap to our solutions. We identified the issues, investigated, hired people with expertise to study this. We engaged our community, educated and created more awareness around the issues, identified solutions with our community, and then we implemented those solutions. And then we reported back to the community with them. This is a picture of our Slurktis lake. This is where our water comes from. And This picture is actually from a helicopter during the water shortage. And in the next slide, you'll see where the water intake is here at the lower part of the photo. That round object, that's actually our water intake. Here's a picture of it. Normally this water is spilling over by these rebar here and going into the intake. So you could see it was pretty far down. We also, in our surveys, we did a lot of questionnaires and asked people about what kind of activities they did. We presented on some of the aspects of how we treat water. We did tours with our school, our public, our leadership and staff, because it's always important that everybody understands the aspects of what you're trying to accomplish. And we did many surveys where we were asking people what their thoughts were, and you can see 99% of our people were aware of the crisis because it was that much of an issue, as well as their thoughts about having the same restrictions as Vancouver. Some thought there should be fines, but we never did implement that. We did more monitoring, and we did not install water meters on every home. However, we did install flow meters on our infrastructure. Some of our education would teach people where the water usage is in an average household. You can see that a lot of your water usage comes from washing clothes or your bathroom facilities. Part of our education was teaching and taking things from other programs that were teaching people, and a lot of this came from like municipal areas where they were already far into these programs. These are some of the solutions that came out of our water engagement meetings, and you'll see there's many things that people wanted to talk about, and a lot of strategies people wanted, but you'll see some of the things that occurred were monitoring lake levels more frequently, which we have done now. People were taking no tubs, but they were having short showers. People wanted rain barrels, which we've used water treatment plant barrels for, made them more available. We did install low flow faucet heads from the BC Hydro Indigenous Conservation Program. We did raise our dam, as well as we found one thing that was very important to our investigation too, was that we did not have the water rights to the lake or the lakes surrounding our area. So that's one important aspect which today we're still working on and trying to gain those water rights, and it's part of a reconciliation movement for the province as well and the government of Canada. But overall, the biggest aspect, I guess, is we wanted to reduce our contribution to global warming. It's one of those aspects that people wanted to see the most. These are the four main things people wanted to see: rain barrels, low flow shower heads, Energy Star appliances, and low flow toilets. All initiatives that we're working on. This is some of our great water treatment staff. You'll see Capital Works Manager John Smith, Richard Fenton, and John Wesley in this photo. So this is the gentleman working on, one is the leak that they're occurring with the backhoe there, and then the other ones are Richard Fenton using listening devices to listen for leaks that we wanted to correct as in our process. But we like to thank our water treatment staff for creating such beautiful product for our people, and also monitoring and closely watching how we protect that resource. In some of our studies, we hired Fraser Basin diving, and they came up and they did a bathymetry studies. So we actually now know the volume of what we have and where we need to hit critical levels at. So now we monitor and manage our water resource so well that we don't really come close to the same issues in the past. This is another survey. We asked people how much they think they reduce their water consumption. You could see that over half of our people reduce their consumption or thought they reduce their consumption by 90% or 50%, sorry, and that's 90%. So that's quite a bit. And the secondary number would have been 80%, and that's pretty good. This is just some of the things about monitoring how they were affected by the water crisis, as well as how they think we handled the water shortage crisis. And you could see that 88% were satisfied or very satisfied with how this program went. And that comes back from the process of comprehensive community planning and enabling your community to help direct the goals and solutions for where you want to go. And at the end of all this struggle, we had a celebration dinner. This was a celebration dinner where we wanted to thank and give hawas to our community for doing the work they did and helping guide us to where we got to. And that's our water conservation slideshow.
Hoanang Kilslas. I remember that summer, I think it was like a 5-week drought. And, I guess a lot of that is due to, my understanding is the runoff, like the snow melt or when we rain, like there's a lot of rock on Haida Gwaii, right? So it runs off quite rapid. It can be hard even for Haida Gwaii to conserve water. I remember a nation on the mainland having to spend a couple million, I think, to bring in water that summer too, if I recall correctly. So just seeing the amazing work that you and your band council are doing, and the people you bring in to do the work for what has been called some of the best drinking water on Haida Gwaii. You've been proactive with logic and planning and bringing in and engaging the right team, the core of which is community. I love to see that you built it from the ground up. I know that your wife, Yuans, was a big part of that. She's an amazing facilitator, great at bringing community together. So education results in knowledge. Knowledge is power. You have demonstrated we have the power to make change. We do have that power. The knowledge I need is about gray water. I think I shared this story before, but one year I thought I was being real cool and I was going to use gray water, as people call it, for my plants. So I boiled some eggs and put vinegar in so the eggs wouldn't spread while they're boiling. And then I forgot about the vinegar and I poured the water in my plants and I killed them all. So what I need is your training program. If I could get some from you, I'd love that. Maybe we can make some of that information available publicly in the future. Again, I'll touch base with you on that. Okay. Okay.
Sure.
Hawa Nankil Slas. And again, to you and your council for all you do. And now we have Kithgula Kaya, Severin Cullis Suzuki, who is a member of the K'aadiska Kigawai Tanut Raven clan. She has always been concerned for the earth and since childhood has been speaking out for how change in society, has been speaking out for change in how society is treating the earth and waters. For 4 seasons, she worked with Jeff Bear and Marianne Jones on the TV show Samagwin, which is also called Water Stories. And it looks at how Indigenous people across Turtle Island are addressing challenges to their waters. For many years, she has been studying Haida Kill and believes that language and the land and water are intimately and powerfully connected. Kithgulakaya will share some reflections about water issues in the greater world and will share some thoughts on our relationship with water here on Haida Gwaii and on continuing to keep our water safe and sacred. Welcome, Kithgulakaya.
Awa Jaskang kills like gonga, oljat gonga, istahulan koyasis. Singait la dalang wadachan, sinchasla dalang wadachan. A hayat to the ice gohan singai Luigi, at di gudingay la. Haidas kadanga itki kiskulas kaudagi dalangaw sukil la. Alangud at is at di gudingay la. Chiefs, matriarchs, my precious friends, good day, good evening to you all. Today is Earth Day and I'm happy. I'm grateful for all of the people who are speaking to us today. It's very good to be together. I really miss everyone and I miss coming together so much. So I'm very honored to be here today. Kishkulakaya hanudi kiraga, diuk araspa kirawaga. My Haida name is Kishkulakaya. I'm Severn, and I was adopted into the Wolf Raven clan of Tanu. So I'm very honored to be invited to speak tonight and share this virtual stage with these other amazing voices. Hawa to Jiskung and the other organizers for this invitation and for all this effort, this event on an important day, Earth Day. Today we're gathering on Tlagak School Singai Earth Day, and we're gathering to talk about bundle or unch water. Our planet is called Earth, but if you were out in space looking at this planet, you might say it should be actually be called water, because 71% of the Earth's surface is covered in water. But of this, almost all of that water is salty. 96.5% of the water covering the Earth's surface is in the oceans. So that means only 3% of all the water on that 3% of water that's fresh, almost all of it is locked away, is unavailable. It's in glaciers, it's in the polar ice caps, it's in the atmosphere, it's in soil, or it's highly polluted, or it lies too far under the Earth's surface to be extracted at an affordable cost. So it's most of that water is unavailable. Only 0.5% of the entire planet's water is actually available as drinkable water. So I just, these are maybe just some basic facts about water, but it still boggles my mind, and especially considering I am so privileged to live here as a guest on Haida Gwaii. Here on Haida Gwaii, we are particularly blessed with water. We are not only surrounded by water, our ocean as an island, as an archipelago, but we live in a rainforest ecosystem where we receive beautiful fresh water from the sky almost every day, except for this last week. And here is a place where it's not being polluted by mining or fracking. Given today's industrial carbon polluting economy of globalized humans, many people in this world and in Canada cannot turn on the tap and get drinking water. And of course, it's no surprise that the people most affected by this are Indigenous people and marginalized peoples in society. And I grew up always knowing this conceptually, but recently it's really hit home over the last few years as I've hosted friends from the mainland here on Haida Gwaii, just coming to visit people who've lost their clean drinking water. And they have to fight to try to regain what we still have, or what we've always had, which is access to fresh, clean, abundant water. And it's devastating. It's devastating to host my friends, and to see them experience what we have every day and see them reflect on what they have lost. It's devastating. Part of them is gone. Part of them is damaged. They predict that in the future, wars will be fought over water, but maybe it's already happening. It's not often spoken of, but the war in Syria was precipitated by a 6-year drought, the worst in a century. And this was a drought that caused over 80% of the livestock to die. And theirs is an economy heavily focused on livestock. And this forced a huge part of the rural population into urban cities. And then because the drought was still continuing on, because people needed work, people were becoming desperate and now crowded in the cities. Of course, this exacerbated civil unrest. So we look at a world where, of course, climate change means that water insecurity will be more and more of a problem. But at the same time, more and more, the world is also awakening to the role of leadership in the path through the environmental mess that colonized culture has brought, the role of leadership of Indigenous people. And I want to give a shout out to Jeff Bear and Marianne Jones for their series called Samagwan, their TV series on APTN. This was a program for 4 seasons. It investigated water issues and how they were affecting Indigenous communities, and how Indigenous communities were taking leadership in those problems, how they were directly addressing the water problems caused by environmental degradation or water or stealing of water. So the show covered issues like the 2014 breach of the Mount Polley tailings pond disaster. Remember that? It's, 7 years ago now, but that was where the Imperial Mines tailings pond dam was breached, releasing 24 million square meters of toxic chemical directly into the ecosystem. It totally washed out an entire creek. The show also looked at the effects of the 2010 offshore oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico and the effects on people who harvest shrimp and make their living off of the ocean there. It also looked at the impacts of water alienation on culture and how people were actually dealing with the devastating effects of not having access. It dealt with reclamation, with how people were taking their waterways back. And one of the stories covered was the story of Costa, Copper Bay, and how the community reclaimed the damaged river and restored the Sockeye Run through its own management. So I feel really lucky to have played a small role in the show doing the introductions. I learned a lot. And through Samagwan, I want to just share with you talk about a very special person I was able to meet, a special grandmother, an Anishinaabe water warrior called Josephine Mandamin, known as the grandmother water walker. She had an amazing long life, but in her her last decade of life, she was her Anishinaabe Nation's chief water commissioner. And I wanted to talk to her tonight because I think that tonight's webinar is connected to the supernatural beings webinar, the female supernatural beings webinar. So I was listening to Terry Lynn speak about Creek women, low tide women. So like the Haidas, Josephine's people believe that water itself is a living being. She said, "We've known for a long time that water is alive. Water can hear you. Water can sense what you are saying and what you are feeling. Give it respect and it can come alive. Like anything, like a person who's sick. If you give them love, if you take care of them, they'll come alive." So this grandmother in her 70s walked around the Great Lakes from 2003 to 2017. She walked around the lakes several times. And she did this to pray for the waters, to bring ceremony to the water. She would walk along the highway carrying a bucket of water from each location and bring it to the next body of water and pray over it. And she also did this, of course, to bring awareness to the problems of water pollution and environmental degradation on the Great Lakes and on Indigenous reserves in general in Canada. The grandmother water walker passed away in 2019, but she's left an incredible legacy. She taught the younger generations her teachings, and she leaves her great niece, the now famous water warrior Autumn Pelletier, who, though still a teen, is now her nation's chief water commissioner. So it's just a really amazing story, and I wanted to share this that I learned about with you, because It's very powerful, and it made me think about the supernaturals of Haida Gwaii webinar. And after that webinar, I was finally moved to action on something that had been bothering me, but I just so easily just put it off. I often walk by a creek very near my house, and this creek is a beautiful little creek, but for the last few months, basically over the winter, it's had a pile of trash right beside it. And this is where a bear had gotten into someone's garbage and dragged a garbage bag in and then took it apart to try to find something to eat, and this left the garbage there. And I walked by that creek seeing that garbage for months and always thought that, oh, I'll deal with that later. And finally, after the learning and thinking about Jilakuns, I finally just raced down there and picked up all the garbage. It only took me half an hour. It was nothing. And it just changed when I was thinking now about not just a creek, but when I realized I was helping creek women, I felt differently. I felt more responsibility. I felt more urgency to help our beautiful water systems. Realizing that creek was a living, sacred, and supernatural being, it moved me beyond my own complacency. And I'm someone who cares, I'm someone who tries to do good things, but I still walk by. My Jiru Nadai Gwaganad, our own grandmother warrior for the earth, she says that once you know that the creeks are sacred, once you know that water is alive, you become responsible. I felt so much better. I felt like I'd actually done something. I'd actually made a difference. I'd been able to help, even in a small way, to help the life systems to keep me alive. So what can we do to support our healthy water systems? I think we can practice our connections to water. I think Haida beliefs about water are so powerful. And I think that all citizens of Haida Gwaii could learn from these beliefs and could begin to practice respect towards the supernaturals that live in the creeks, rivers, lakes, and oceans. Let's all bring that into our lives so that we can continue to strengthen our support of the waters and lands. The supernaturals were entrusted to us to do good things. And we have to continue to stay vigilant. We can never take what we have for granted. We have to stay aware of what's happening in the world outside and the lures that surely will come. The end of this exploitative era is coming, but it's not going to go down without a fight. So we have to stay vigilant, and there are plenty of examples here on Haida Gwaii, including the people on this panel who are examples of staying vigilant. Di kilgi dalang gusta skaudagi dalang galfu kiltla hawa.
Iskula Gaya Saudang Theda Hawa so much. I had a lot to think about there, and I think I'll start with that, the old Nang Kingai Yuan's James Young taught Antiguaganat and taught me, and then Antiguaganat's taught me further from her learning from Nang Kingai Yuan's. That sounds complex, but that's how it works. That the first cycle of humans came out of the air and we didn't survive. The supernatural were there. And the second cycle of humans came from the earth. And again, we didn't quite survive, but the supernatural were there. And this cycle of humans, these cycles of the Haida today come from the ocean. And they say it's because the supernatural took pity on us. So just wanted to add that into your beautiful story and sharing. I was really struck when you said that I want to make sure I got this right, 0.5% of the entire planet's water is drinkable. Did I get that right? 0.5% of 0.5%, right? Not
And accessible.
Pardon me?
And accessible. Like there's fresh water that's locked away on the mountaintops and ice caps, but not accessible.
Okay, so only 0.5% of the entire water on the planet that's drinkable is accessible, right?
Isn't it shocking?
I'm gobsmacked. Like I really am. Like that, I actually bolded. I'm just like, wow. And then you brought up the Gulf of Mexico, and it reminded me so much of watching that. That was just like when the Simushir was coming close to Haida Gwaii. Like we were in Vancouver, and we were just crying, like just bawling, and there was no human beings life at risk. We were crying for the water. And but then your lightness, your brightness, you bring up all the good things, and it reminded me again then of the Amazon River, where the Columbia Supreme Court granted it legally enforceable rights. I don't know how it's turned out, given things now, but I just thought that was incredible. Do you know much about that? I really don't, Sev.
There is a movement in the world, in New Zealand and even in India, where through the courts, they've actually succeeded in granting rights to rivers, that rivers are alive and have the rights of living beings. So, then how those laws are actually enforced, that's a whole other question. But, this concept that water is alive, yes, other countries are actually enshrining this in law.
That's amazing. I hope that we can figure that out over on this neck of the wood, the Canadian government. So then also that makes me think, water is alive. It makes me think about, in my opinion, the most powerful physical force that defines us is water. I think about before, when the earth, in the beginning, the world was covered in water, even the supernaturals needed a place to rest, right? When maybe water's watching us and it goes, well, it's time for me to get cold and get the heck out of here. I don't like what's going on. I don't know, maybe it's not that, and then it'll melt. Like it's got all these personalities that directly impact who we are and how we live and our health. So you just got me a little revved up here. I'm all over the place, but I just want to say, I think you were 12 when you silenced the world with your wise words. And this year, you are taking on a huge role and responsibility as ED of the David Suzuki Foundation. And I just want to thank you, and behalf of everyone, thank you for the work you've been doing your whole life, for never stopping. And Hawa for reminding us that if we understand that water is not only life, but it is alive, that's just going to really shift how we look at things, I think. And I thank you for that. So Hawa Diftachli. So next, just for anyone who has just joined us or is wondering, we have two more wonderful panelists tonight, and I want to remind you, we have some amazing comments in here too. I want to acknowledge there's a lot of really beautiful comments on Facebook and on Zoom. I might just pull a couple here. Jenny Cross says Jenny Cross Collinson says we are certainly blessed to be of Haida Gwaii in its purity and richness. And Serena Havana Smith says, wow, that is beautiful. Love that idea. It's a good reminder that water can be transformed through thoughts and prayers. There's so many on here, and we do need to keep moving along. I'm really excited to present to you, to introduce to you Kaitla Hyalas Rain Boyko. She is from the Yakulanis Raven clan and was raised on Haida Gwaii. Rain has recently completed a marine biology degree from Hawaii Pacific University. Rain's interest in marine science has stemmed from her upbringing and the surrounding waters that have provided everything we need. Tonight, Rain will reflect on the scientific and traditional understandings of how water provides life. Welcome, Kaitla Hyalas.
All right. Sinyaslas, good evening, everybody. Happy Earth Day, and Hawa for the introduction. So, I don't know why my background's like this, but I can't fix it right now. So what I'm going to share today is my understanding of water and some things I have been taught throughout my Western education and also in a traditional sense. I like to think of science and traditional knowledge as two sides of the same coin. I chose to study marine science to complement traditional Haida values and culture, my growing passion for the waters on Haida Gwaii, and growing up understanding that the ocean and rivers are a part of who we are as Haida people. All life on Earth has evolved from the marine environment. We live on a water planet. All living cells need water. Properties of water are very unique and vital for the survival of any ecosystem. Seagay, the ocean, provides roughly 70% of the world's oxygen. Most of this comes from marine plants and phytoplankton, and these are microscopic organisms that fill water environments. They do this through a process called photosynthesis. Just a little science there. It is well known that water is needed for growth within plants and animals. Everything from the tiny little phytoplankton to blue whales and lichens to our big, beautiful cedar trees. The ocean affects the global weather patterns and climate. So it's ultimately a regulator. Surface waters are constantly evaporating into the atmosphere to then form clouds, and then it falls on land in precipitate forms as rain, snow, or ice. The ocean currents also play a large part in regulating the temperature, which is super important and why we don't have drastic changes in temperature from day to night. A good way to think about the ocean's circulation is like a giant conveyor belt that takes the cold waters from the north and south poles to the tropics and vice versa. Without this movement, much of the Earth would be uninhabitable due to the extreme temperatures. Beyond the oceans, water is deeply connected to our forest ecosystems as well, from the soils to the tops of the largest trees. Water is needed in every step of the plant life cycle. Trees also help regulate our climate through a process called evapotranspiration. It's a little bit more complex, but it's essentially water is drawn up from the soil through the trees and other plants, and then it's released into the atmosphere, which cools the surrounding environment. Healthy ancient forest ecosystems conserve and store fresh water within their complex root systems, which reduces runoff, and it also supports neighboring bog ecosystems. And I wanted to mention bogs because they're not often brought up in terms of like being these like important ecosystems, but they're major. The bogs on Haida Gwaii are one of the greatest ways of storing and capturing carbon on the planet, as long as the soil and the water table is undisturbed. This watery bog environment is a major carbon sink and more complex than we recognize. So to wrap up the science side, the ocean and forests are vital for the regulation of our climate, and they do this with clean water. And this is especially important as we're, with climate change and what we face with climate change and all the different sort of parts of that. We kind of have to really look to these natural systems, these natural ecosystems, what makes them thrive and what allows them to keep going. We need to support them. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the other side of the coin, so to speak. So the word reciprocity is always at the forefront of my thought process, my thinking when it comes to not just water, but science in general. Both the oceans and the freshwater systems are very, like, both water systems are so important. And the word reciprocity, it's essentially a mutual dependence, a cyclical relationship which provides everything we need. And in return, we have to, recognize that we have this inherent responsibility to take care of the waters that we depend on, for everything, for our survival, for all living creatures, as well as practicing our gratitude and giving thanks to the sacredness of water. And in Haida culture, as it was mentioned, like the supernatural beings, that is a major, major level of importance for us as well. So in Haida tradition, it's well known that we must respect all living things, the smallest of things. The word in Haida is yakudang, which includes not just animals, but also plants, and then water. Water is needed to carry nutrients through the body, much like the china, the salmon, need fresh, clean water to travel up the rivers. And that's one way I kind of like to think about it, because so often we think of just our own unit, our own bodies, or us as individuals, but everything is like this really beautiful network. And it's like the living roots of the earth, rivers, the running waters. It's all part of this perfectly functioning system. So anyway, in our culture, water is very much this living entity, perhaps like it's sort of not in this reductionist view, which often breaks it down into like its individual components, such as it's a molecule of H2O, but this system is teeming with life. In past science, it breaks it down into all its little parts and categories, and it fails to see this synergistic relationship that water provides. So put simply, in reductionist terms, 1 + 1 = 2, but synergy describes 1 + 1 = 3, and that extra one encompasses everything that water gives: living, breathing organisms, plants, sustenance, and culture. All life exists as a byproduct of water. Beyond providing life, water is a huge part of Haida culture, which has always connected the land and the sea. And our Haida culture depends on water. We have clean, fresh drinking water on our islands. We get our food from the ocean and the forests. We travel on the ocean and along the rivers, and we have since time immemorial. The tree of life, our sister, the cedar tree, needs healthy ecosystems, soils, and clean water to thrive and to grow to the size that they have historically, and so that we may continue our culture. Without the cedar, we wouldn't have our longhouses, our totem poles, our canoes, which are large symbols of our rich culture. Water reminds me of who we are as Haida people. It's our responsibility to the gifts it provides, and continues to just provide. And if we want that to continue, we need to really take care of it. It has to be this mutualistic relationship. And so the gifts are a reminder to us, as it's a reminder that we must give thanks and protect the waters to ensure a healthy, reciprocal relationship for many generations to come. And that is, I think, that's all that's where I'll leave it. There have been so many good things said tonight, and there's I feel like you could just talk and talk about all the important parts of water and what it means, to us as not just human beings, but just culturally and as Haida people on Haida Gwaii. And it makes me hopeful for the future to hear about all of these different kind of parts of what water means to everybody and why water is life. So Hawa to the other panelists for sharing and everyone for listening. That is the end of my talk.
Oh, so much, Rain. I was thinking about when your mom worked at the Haida Gwaii Museum and you would get off the bus and you would come to see her every day after school. I hope I don't embarrass you. You were so little and you'd like crawl across the floor to scare her every day. She'd be waiting to go, oh, like that. It was the cutest thing. And now you're a graduate speaking like this. And I'm like, whoa, you're blowing my mind, right? So it's amazing. It's amazing how people turn out. I'm so proud of you. And to hear I like the way you said two sides of the same coin, right? Like it's bringing together our Haida knowledge and our Haida science ultimately, right? And worldview and spirituality alongside of Western science and knowledge. And they really are one and the same. It's how it's just that some expand this way and some this way, and we have different words for different things. But you reminded us all, using both sides of the same coin, of our inherent responsibility. I want to say that in addition to us, you have a scuba diver that is like absolutely mesmerized by your words right behind you. So that's great too. And you were talking about even how water, moves things through. And I used to tell that to my kids every morning, like, okay, you got to have a drink of water. You need to wash your tummy out and then wash your teeth and then wash your face. But I also want to say that Auntie Dorothy Russ in the comments, she said, water is healing. And I found your words really healing tonight. And I thank you for that, Rain. And the future is so bright, and you're the beaming light. So Hawa again. Next, oh, sorry. Next, we have Rain's uncle, Kifkulan's Christian White, who is a Haida artist living in Autlage and is involved in the arts, language, and culture. He has carved ocean-going canoes under his late father's direction. He still continues to carve canoes along with his families and friends. He also advocates to protect sacred headwaters. He's here tonight to talk a bit about our Haida traditions and understandings of the sacred headwaters where the rivers meet the sea. Welcome, Keith Gulan.
Sangyas la Hadalasis Tulankoyasis Tulangwash Kilag Kirkolan Sinudikya. I'd like to start off by telling a little bit about my childhood memories. When I was very young, a long time ago, we had wells. We had a well in our yard where we had to get water. And we also had a rain barrel, very large rain barrel that we, at the end of every summer, we would scrub it out, preparing for the winter rains. And also we had another well back in the forest. So my grandfather and my brothers, we would go into the forest and bail it out and then scrub the sides and then put gravel into the bottom. So it wasn't very long ago, really. But when we didn't have running water in our homes, and so I just wanted to remind the young people that we should be very grateful for all the modern conveniences that we have nowadays. My grandfather, Jeffrey White, he was the first person to bring me to the rivers, to Awan River, far up the inlet here. It would take us approximately about 8 hours to get there by boat, about 40 miles or so. And there we would set our nets and set up our camp. And, he would, always try to give us good luck. And when we got our first salmon, we brought it back to camp. Or before we brought it back to camp, he had me cut it in a certain way, cutting it off the backbone, leaving the head attached and all the fins and the tail. And then he had me place it into the river, and he sang a chant. I can't remember the chant, but I remember him doing that. And in the late night hours, we would sit around the fire, and he would tell me stories. And one of the stories he told me was the story of Conang Undley. It's a river on the west coast in its traditional territory. And it's a story about a young woman who was abandoned by her people. She woke up one morning and they were gone. And she stayed there walking up and down the beach for a long time, and trying to look for food. And she's walking along, she kicked a cockle shell. She took it back to her little wigwam or whatever it was she was staying in. And then, but you could hear a voice inside of it. And inside, it opened up and a little child was in there. He stepped out of the shell, little boy child, he stepped out and he grew instantly. He grew. He went on to hunt birds, and he grew every day, bringing the birds back to his mother. The story went on, and finally, master carpenter, master artisan came to visit them. And then he came outside. The young woman welcomed him in. "I have come to see my family," he said. And from there, he was welcomed in with them, and he would talk, "Oh, my son, I've been waiting to meet you." And life went on good. When the boy went to sleep at nighttime, he covered the boy and his mother with his robe. He told him to go to sleep. And he said, "In the morning, you will have a surprise." And so when they woke up in the morning, they found they were in a big house like this with totem poles. And from there, Master Carpenter, he said, "Well, it's time for me to move on. My wife, you will sit here where this creek is. You'll sit here and you'll become the creek woman. My son, you'll sit in the sky and you will warn people of the weather with the color of your robe." So they settled there for a long time. Master Carpenter went along to have his adventures. And when years went by, the human beings went there, and they start going through the river, stomping around in the headwaters. And she didn't like that. So she shook. She moved up into, she created a big valley. The mountains were spread open, and she went up along, making a big valley, making a big river coming out of the mountains there. And and it was almost like landslides coming down. And so she became the being, the Andla Gujanga, the daughter of the river, I guess, or else Andlajat, Gandaljat. So it was one of many of the stories my grandfather told me. There was others that my Uncle Willis told me, other killer whale stories. So I always try to explain that the rivers are the dwelling place of the female supernatural beings. The points of land, the headlands, are the dwelling places of the the male supernatural beings. So as we went to one of the Council of the Haida Nations meetings a couple of years ago, and there was also, we were hearing words of our lands being logged, our stands of cedars being targeted. You know, we were getting worried about it, and we still are. And so I was, I talked with some other fellows that were in a meeting, and you know, Captain Gold was there, and also Goutlands, he was there, and we talked to them. Should we raise this resolution? Should we say we have to protect these sacred headwaters? And they agreed with me. So we wrote it up and presented the resolution to the assembly. And it was great that it passed. And I think it's just reinforcing what we say we're going to do. Over the years, Council of Haida Nation has created protected areas, riparian zones for along the rivers, cultural use areas, so it's building on it. We got to keep on going as to protect these sacred headwaters, but we see it coming. We see them targeting these headwaters for logging, leaving a very small fringe of trees along the rivers. So, yeah, we have to protect these areas. And, you know, we hear about drought in Skidegate, and, you know, we see we're fortunate here in Masset right now. We have quite a good water source, but just 2 years ago, where the water comes from was targeted by the logging companies, and they were gonna they got permits actually to log in those areas just above Newmasset, the headwaters of the creeks that come out of there. And so that we had to go stand up for it and put a stop to that logging of that area, because that's where our drinking water comes from. And it reminds me of when I was a child, when we had to go to the wells to get water, and we didn't have a source of water, rainwater mainly, throughout the summer months. So that's what we had, because our community well would also dry up. And so that's something I went through in the 1960s. So we have to really think about that, and also think about the water table, which was mentioned earlier. The water table is basically, it's underground lakes. And there is many of them, I'm sure, under Haida Gwaii. And we have also large lakes too. So we have all those resources. Water is more valuable than oil. We see in the interior, the eastern part of the province, where fracking has been going on. And it's only a matter of time until the water is contaminated. And so we see that we have to protect our water, our fresh water resources is going to be the utmost importance in the future, and it has a very high value. And I think that that's something that we have to really look at in the future, the water tables of Haida Gwaii. I was at an island called Calvert Island, where the 13,000-year-old footprints were found, just in the southern part of the Hilchik territory. And on Calvert Island, they have an institute there called Hakai Institute, which was once a fishing lodge. And they were able to tap into a water table that would actually provide water for up to 30,000 people on that small little island. And so I think it's very important that we keep that in mind also um, for the future. And I'd just like to say thank you for all your beautiful presentations tonight. And, it's really given me a chance to think throughout all the information that I've been provided with tonight. And I really enjoyed it. And so also, I'm thinking about the ocean really too. I walk the beaches almost every day, and it's just very disheartening to see all the plastics that are along the shorelines. It's very, very a lot of just normal trash that you would see, garbage bag or just plastic bags, everything, bottles. And other fishing gear you see along the beaches. And I'm really grateful that there's going to be a program here coming up where there's going to be some beach cleanup. And so that's going to be really a good thing to do. And before it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and even in our communities too, we have to look at that. And because everything leads to the groundwaters too. Like I said, at one time we had wells in our own community. Now, those might be harder to get at. Like I remember when I was young, on a cultural camp, and to get water, we just went to the high water mark of the beach, and then we just dug a hole. And by the time we're finished playing around, the hole would be filled with water that we drank. And so, I hear many elders telling me the same story. When they traveled the inlet here, all the way along, they would drink water from all the creeks and springs along the way. And so, yes, it is the waterways are our highways, and we have to have a lot of respect. We see what can happen with sudden weather changes. The power of the sea is formidable, and I just wish everybody who's out on the waters this summer is playing it safe, and they will be prepared and get advice and show respect. And if we do all these things, we will do all right. Sige an yakudanga, anle an yakudanga. Hoa, tlungwaruan wafkilag. Hoa.
Hawa kisbilang saudang peda. And man, I wish we could. I think we need a part 2 on this one with the same speakers, even, because there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot there, and I just wanted to start back in the beginning where you actually brought up it really wasn't that long ago that we didn't have running water in our homes, and I think that's a pretty important thing for the younger people to know, like you're saying, even being down in Guayhanas or out wherever, you still have to go get your water, hey? And I think, maybe we should be doing more of that to really instill in us and remind ourselves how precious water is. Like you say, we need to be so grateful for it. I love how you brought together the feminine aspect and the masculine aspect of where water meets land and intersects, and giving it, reaffirming the life that water is and has. That you would speak so beautifully of stories that you learned from your uncles and chinais and things like that. Such important stories, such important learning, and that you'd be so generous as to share it and pass it on. And it reminded me about a story my father, Skille, told to me It was a very brief one, just saying that he'd been told that there were killer whales up your way that used to go every year when they came back to a waterfall and drink out of it, like, you know, go up into the waterfall and open their mouth and drink from it. So even Skana, the powerful, most powerful being of the sea, needs fresh, clean water. And as a canoe maker, you definitely do know the power of the seas as a canoe maker and a canoe mover. And Hawa for reminding us that we must always have Yahgudang, respect. We must always practice it. The water is life and water can take life, and we must respect it fully. Your words are powerful, and I thank you for this. And in a moment, you'll be sharing a beautiful song with us as well. How for your advocacy too, you know, getting that resolution passed, and to Autlage for having to take that on to care for your headwater, and to the Daughters of the River, the Daughters of the River who are here today up in Autlage, taking care of our fish and our water. However, you and Sev bringing up beach cleanup, it's not that hard to do, and it's kind of scary. We did some marine debris cleanup, and I thought we were cleaning up marine debris, and my husband Danny and my friend Nankilslas Trent, they said, actually, this isn't marine debris. This is ocean garbage from everyone who throws it in the water. It wasn't marine debris. So that was pretty shocking to see how many water bottles were thrown 100 feet into the forest. And there's the teachings you've shared are so critical to helping us be better people and to give ourselves back to Haida Gwaii in the water. So we've had a lot of really wonderful comments, and there's also one here from Nankilslas from Trent that is actually as shocking as the 0.5%. There are 61 Indigenous communities in Canada that still face water crisis. This includes communities that have no clean drinking water. It has to be shipped in. This includes an Indigenous nation in the lower mainland of British Columbia that is surrounded by a city and is only just getting linked into the water system. They're surrounded by a city, not off to the side. There's so much work to be done around access to clean water and the rights to clean water. And do your homework on the state of Indigenous access to clean water and make those moves. Like Severn says, we can do these things. Be inspired by the words you heard tonight, by the wisdom shared tonight. When you see that garbage by a river, do pick it up. When you see that a child does not have clean drinking water in Canada, do something about it. So I don't know, that put me on a big rant, I'm sorry, but that was really important, Trent, Hawa, for sharing that. And Natalie McFarland says, such a great webinar, so much knowledge and history shared. Hawa to all the participants. And there's a whole bunch of wonderful comments like that. So Hawa to everyone who did make comments. There is a question in amongst all the other wonderful words. Michelle McDonald asked earlier in the evening, if anyone wants to jump in with the answer, how do we stop large ships from dumping their garbage and gray water into our waters and oceans when they wait to unload at the port in Prince Rupert? So my understanding of the big ships is, you know, sometimes you have gray water because you're creating ballast. I don't even know why you have gray water. And then it pumps out. And I don't know if Nang Jingwas or Nang Kilsas or anyone else would like to speak about or Rain about the challenges of the marine travel, and not just, you know, the potential for a shipwreck, But the fact that even when they're simply floating there, they can be changing our water. How can we go about stopping that? Does anyone have an idea? Or want to speak to the complexities of it? That was a tough question, Michelle. We will follow up with you on that one because you've
Because
people.
they just had a news article about that, and they talked about the industry, and I can't remember what they were saying. Like every hour is producing 61,000 gallons of raw sewage and waste on some of these large super ships. And I just happened to watch that the other day, and the problem isn't that they're dumping it in our waters, but they're dumping it off our coastline, which gets validated as international waters. And that's where the regulation is lacking. So it's something that we have to work on for sure as higher level government. And I see Nanjin was saying he has a bad connection, but I'm positive that he'll have a response to that as well.
How that knowing that really does complicate matters more. Hey, the international waters card. So Nangjingwas does have a bad connection, but he's very knowledgeable on this as well. Hawa Nangkilslas. So all the wonderful people who put in comments, questions, inspiration, and information. There will be a draw later tonight, and we will advise the 4 lucky winners of their, Wadluchan Plu, of which Christian White is in here, and a beautiful medicine pouch full of local teas. So that's donated by the Haida Museum in Nislane. And we want to thank Jen Rutt, who's keeping track of it all, and we'll do the draw, and there'll be lucky people. And I would like to thank all of our amazing panelists tonight. It is just, I really do think. So Shelley and Missy, I'm sorry, but I think we need more water webinars. But thank you all for sharing your hearts and your spirits with us tonight, the inspiration, the information, the practical nature of things we can do, the longer term goals and the long game. I want to remind everyone out there that you can contribute beyond this webinar by emailing HG, short for Haida Gwaii, hgfoodstrategy@gmail.com with any ideas, questions. If you want to see another webinar, you can tell I want to keep doing them. And we have also to look at Kara Seavright's beautiful graphic recordings from this evening. I don't know, Kara, if you're ready to share your screen or not, but while we're doing that, I also want to thank the hosts of tonight's show, the Council of the Haida Nation and the dynamic team leading the All Island Food Strategy, and Tahawa to the Skidegate Band Council, Local Food to School, Sweetweed Sustainability Society, Haida Gwaii Museum, and the Haida Health Centers in both Gao Tlage and Gagilda. Once we look at Kara's beautiful work, which is up on the screen, we will be really excited to end such a wonderful evening with a beautiful song, which I'll announce shortly. Kara, your work is lovely. I have to make my screen a little bigger. You've got some great stuff in. Oh, you've got a lot of stuff in there. I cannot wait to see the final product. Low flow toilets, solutions, monitor water use, absolutely. I love that is something about Nunkil's last presentation as well, that the community was not only involved in the visioning, it was there was a celebration at the end for the good work that the community did, the hard work. And we should celebrate tonight by ending this evening with a beautiful song that will be sung to us by Keith Goulan's Christian White. It's a Sus Ana song, Ocean Spirit, and it's a song about calming the waters, and you will calm our hearts tonight. Christian, Hawa, so much for ending the evening. Hawa kills sly. That was as good a medicine as water itself. Hawa so much. And my heart is calm. So all of you, you have a wonderful evening. And we say Hawa so much to our guests. And we say Hawa to Haida Gwai. We say Hawa to the water, the supernatural. We say Hawa to all of you, and we'll see you again.